guys, welcome back to my channel. So today I wanted to share with you guys the supplements that I used for Tally's 4th grade year of school. I was asked to share the different supplements that we used, and I did want to kind of talk a little bit about it to explain how we went about doing it and what my plans are for the future. So for Tally for 3rd and 4th grade, we used Star Spangled Story through NOTGRASS, and we absolutely have loved their curriculum. One of the reasons that I do love it, not only is the curriculum well balanced and beautifully put together, but it is very, very short lessons to where I can actually do my own supplemental worksheets, workbooks, unit studies, things that I want to touch a little bit more on, but with a full curriculum, I would not have the time to be able to implement that. There just wouldn't be enough time in our day if the lessons were longer. Say if I went with a Becca or if I went with BJU, and then tried to supplement with unit studies. Now, another reason why these unit studies work with Star Spangled Story is because their elementary aged curriculum is literally based for grades 1 through 4. So it comes with 2 books, part 1 and part 2. So what I basically did was for Tally's 3rd grade year, I used the part 1 book. Okay, and then I used part 2 for her 4th grade year. Now, if I would have already been using different curriculums other than Becca in 1st grade, then I would have definitely gone with Star Spangled Story for the full 4 years, because it would have been so easy to replace some days with unit studies, and we would have been able to further touch on specific subjects or topics, read more read-alouds that go along with it and things like that. But because we only had 2 years to get this done, I kind of had to cram a little bit in there. Now, I will mention with the part 1 book, I did not do many unit studies. That was before I started creating them myself. Now, my son is in kindergarten this year, and I plan to use Star Spangled Story next year, so I am starting on unit studies that go with book 1. The unit studies that we used this last year, I had put together as we were moving through the year, and so I do have some unit studies for part 2 right now. Available on my website if you guys are interested in that, and I'll share with you guys those in a moment. But I wanted to speak a little bit about part 1. Now, like I said, I will be using this for my son for 1st grade, so I'm planning on using it 1st through 4th if it works out, if it's something that he enjoys. And so because some of you are asking, I am going to get a head start on these unit studies. So if you guys want to use any of these for part 1, definitely look at my website throughout this school year. I will be moving through them hopefully pretty quickly to get them up, and I will start at the front of the book and work my way through the book. Now, I don't do every lesson with a unit study. I just pick specific topics or people and I move on through that in that way. So let me share with you guys the books that I did get to kind of go into these with unit studies. The unit studies are going to kind of vary on ways that I'm going to put them together. So this is the Pueblo Indians. This is a book that I'm going to use for when they touch on the Pueblonians. So I picked that up. I am going to use the book What Was the Boston Tea Party? That one will be really cool. I have Paul Revere's Ride. This is a book that I'll be using to create the unit study. Now, I found this book and I'm really excited about this book. I'm going to have my daughter read this year, actually, because I believe she touches on some of these subjects still, or topics, in her history this year as well. This is A Voice of Her Own, the story of Phyllis Wheatley, the slave poet. And I'm really, really looking forward to her reading this one. This looks like a really great read, but I am going to try putting something together to go along with that. We have What is the Declaration of Independence? Who was George Washington? Who was Sacagawea? Who was Helen Keller? The Trail of Tears. I have a glare and I'm sorry. What was the Gold Rush? Who was Harriet Tubman? I'm not sure which ones I'm going to use out of these, but I also have Who Was Sojourner Truth? and what was the Underground Railroad. I also, the last one I have here is who was Abraham Lincoln. So I am going to be doing unit studies on these, or worksheets, workbooks, different activities to go along with them, or crafts, all kind of stuff all that together in a unit study. So make sure you guys are subscribed if you guys want to follow along on that journey, and I will let you guys know as I move through getting them up onto my website. Now, if I don't do a full video on that, maybe I will do it in my community tab here on YouTube, or I will post something onto my Instagram as well. Or I'll just mention it in one of my videos, or a few of my videos here that I do on Simply Homeschool. So that's basically my plans for part 1 of our Star Spangled story. But now let me share with you guys what we did use for this year. So I went ahead and put together a Wright Brother workbook here. This, you can already, all these that I'm going to share with you guys can find them on my website, and I'll have that link down below. But I went ahead and did that alongside the Scholastic Can You Fly High Wright Brothers. This was the book that we used to kind of go along with that. I also put together the Ellis Island workbook here. And the book that we used for that was the Ellis Island by Scholastic. It is the Cornerstones of Freedom. Something that I read on the side of that was at Ellis Island. Now, this is not something that goes along with my workbook, really. It was just something to read, and I didn't read the whole thing, but I did read some of this at like read aloud time. Something else that I put together was the Titanic. My kids loved this. Well, my daughter and my niece, they loved doing this one. So this is the workbook here, and the book that we kind of used alongside this was the What Was the Titanic. This is the book that went with that. Something else was the Alexander Graham Bell workbook. And we have this Scholastic, what is it? Let's see, Alexander Graham Bell, Setting the Tone for Communication. I'm pretty sure you can find these all on Thrift Books if you guys don't want to pay full price for them. And then we have George Washington Carver here. And I used the National Geographic African American History Makers collection. There's 4 books in one. So I used this. Something else that we worked on pretty close to the end of the year was Anne Frank. Now, it didn't really touch on Anne Frank very much in the lesson, but the kids wanted to learn more about her. So we went ahead and did that little unit on the Ordinary People Change the World. I Am Anne Frank. Now, this doesn't go really in depth that much about Anne Frank, so I did purchase the Who Was Anne Frank book, and my daughter and myself are reading it right now, and I will be doing a unit study for that, depending on what age your kiddos are. You know, this book is probably more aimed towards the younger kiddos. Okay, so we have the Great Depression here. I did a unit on. And then the book that we used was The Cornerstone of Freedom, The Great Depression by Scholastic. We did World War I. These were really interesting. My kids learned a lot from these. And we used the DK Find Out World War I. I will also say that these are definitely more aimed for 4th graders. It's like an upper elementary versus the lower elementary. So we also did World War II. This is the workbook that I put together. And the book that we used alongside that was the DK Eyewitness World War II. Now, in this book, it does talk about certain topics that I'm not sure if you want your kids to know about quite yet, or if maybe if your kids are around you right now, just mute this or put in an earbud or headphones or something. I'll give you a minute to do that. So in this book, it touches on suicide, and it touches on, there were a couple things. Oh man, now I can't remember what they are. The one that's really standing out to me is suicide, because it talks about Adolf Hitler, and there were a couple things in here. I'm not sure if it was a bad word, but you may want to look through this. This is definitely for older kids. I did read it to my daughter, but we discussed it, and I've already talked to her about hard topics like that, more in a Christian light, like why we don't and what we can do to help, you know, if you're feeling in some kind of way, you know what I mean? But I just wanted to kind of give you a heads up on that there are some things in there that are definitely for the older kids. All right, you guys, sorry, my camera died, so I had to change the battery. Okay, so the last couple things I'm gonna share with you is we went ahead and did Growing Up in America in 1904. This I actually put together kind of alongside the Welcome to Samantha's World 1904, Growing Up in America's New Century. So we used that to go along with this. And then some books that I read on the side that I would suggest is The Orphan Train Writer, One Boy's True Story. This was really good to read after we learned about the orphan train. It talks more about it in depth in this, and it tells a story of this little boy and his family and what the kids went through. And then something else that I picked up and read to them as a read aloud was Kids at Work, Lewis Hine and the Crusade Against Child Labor. This one was really good, you guys. These are very intense and sad, but I think it's important for our kids to understand history and things that have happened and where we're at now, and what the strength it took from people to stand up against things that were not right. So yeah, so this was really a great read as well. It brought up a lot of topics, conversation. The kids still talk about things that we learned from that. And so I wanted to share that with you guys. But that is it, you guys. That is what we used for our supplements this past year for my 4th grader and my 3rd grade niece. And I did want to just share with you guys what my intentions were for part 1 to our Star Spangled story. And how I'm kind of incorporating new unit studies. Now, you definitely do not have to be using our Star Spangled story to use these unit studies. I just use that as our base curriculum, and then I branch off just to kind of like bring in more depth and touch on more deeper specific topics. That's why I've chosen to do these unit studies. So you can definitely just do these on the side. I mean, it teaches so much in these unit studies, you guys. They're pretty awesome. I'm proud of them because I see what it's doing for my kids. I see them actually learning and talking about things that we've learned from the unit studies. So I hope that this was helpful for you guys. If you guys have any questions, please feel free to leave me them in the comments. Let me know if you've used any of these supplements and what you guys thought of them. I would love to hear your guys' opinion about them. I hope that they're good. But that's it, you guys. I hope that you guys enjoyed. Thanks for hanging out with me. As always, I really appreciate you guys being here. I know that you guys are all busy, so it means a lot that you guys take some time out and hang out on my channel. So I appreciate you guys. Have a beautiful rest of your day. You guys be safe, be blessed, and I'll see you guys next time.
Had more of your smile. What if the wind could spread your love? What if your sweetness could reach everyone? There'd be no wars,